Welcome back to the Extra Rep Podcast, guys. I'm Josh.
I'm Liam.
So today, what we're going to talk about is stress and how it impacts your results. So whether that be, fat loss, muscle growth, general well-being, we're going to, have a bit of a deep dive into this. And I think, to preface, I think a lot of people don't quite realize just how stressed they are, probably ourselves included, in everyday life, and how it actually does impact things, whether it goes, like I said, into your gut, your fat loss, your muscle growth, micronutrition. It's all these little things that are going to really add up. And so then at the end, we're going to give you, some strategies in terms of just being able to control your stress and things like that. But I think the first place to always start, Liam, is, when we talk about stress on the body, I guess what's actually happening there.
Well, mechanistically, if that's the right
That's
word,
the word, yep.
Cortisol. It's the stress hormone. We've all heard about it. And then we've also got a nervous system that goes into a sympathetic state, which means, fight or flight, whereas there's a parasympathetic state in your nervous system, which is rest and digest. When cortisol rises, that means your sympathetic state of that fight or flight also rises as well. For survival's sake, everything, mental acuity heightens, you respond differently, heart rate's a little bit faster, like just more mentally alert, but also it feels like there's a whole bunch of adrenaline and stuff going on there. So that's just the mechanistic standpoint, but how it actually impacts your results, a lot more than you think. And it could be any different form of what we call stress. So there could be psychological, there could be physical, there could be emotional, which I guess is similar to psychological, but psychological can go to like external pressure and life stuff. Emotional can be what you're feeling on the inside. It could be, related to your gut. And then physical could be literally you're just doing too much physical stuff.
Yeah, I think like that sort of physical is a good sort of place to start because like when we talk about stress, like you've just mentioned, if you want to break it up, it's like you have internal stress and then you have your external stresses. So if you think about, internal stress, job, partner, money, life shit, right? And you think about your external stresses, which are, the stresses you're putting on the body. So it's like you're training hard, you're running a marathon, like whatever that may be. So I think it's important that the body doesn't understand the difference between the two. So I like to use the analogy of like that stress cup. So we pour a jug full of water and we can go internal and external stress. We want to pull it up. But if there's too much of either, then the jug's going to overflow. And that's under recovering. So if we're under recovering, again, we know that's going to affect fat loss. It's going to affect general health, muscle growth, sleep, all these little things that are then, going to make it a lot harder to get results basically at the end of the day.
Definitely. And look, if we're touching just on the physical one, the more volume you do, the more stress is the body's under essentially. And if you've got all those external factors of, the life stress and everything like that going on, life and emotional, you need to factor that into your training.
Yeah, for sure. And again, it goes the same with cardiovascular training, right? So you have all the people doing all the HIIT workouts, 5-6 times a week on low calories, and they're wondering why, everything's fucked and they can't lose weight. So we'll obviously go into that with the gut and that, but you find if you're putting extreme levels of stress on top of potentially already extreme levels of, external stress through family life, job, etc., that can be, a real cascading snowball, which is why, for a lot of my clients, not just from a general health standpoint, I'm really starting to push that idea of, trying to get just some steady state zone 2 cardio, once or twice a week, just to help, again, probably help regulate their nervous system a little bit. And obviously, we know there's no, there's no worse way in terms of being like, you're a bit, your heart rate's a bit lower, you're a bit healthier, you pump blood around, the system, and you probably recover a little bit better. And I think you tolerate stress a little bit better as well. Whereas if your heart rate is, resting heart rate is sky high, it's going to peak, it's going to become more dangerous. And like I said, you're not going to be able to manage, that stress as well.
And speaking of managing stress, there's one thing that we do every single night that will help us manage the next day's stress, and that's sleep. Sleep is where we actually recover from a lot of the accumulative fatigue, not just from the body, but mentally up here as well. We've got deep sleep, we've got REM sleep and all that stuff, rapid eye movement sleep, deep sleep, which helps repair the brain overnight. You've got powerful antioxidants going on because psychologically and just from a pure information standpoint, especially with how bombarded we are with, how switched on life is, we are like taking in everything at once. We need to refresh, reset, and then get that going again. And then even from a hormone standpoint, our circadian rhythm resets, where that stress hormone cortisol naturally spikes higher in the morning just due to the fact that it's like, okay, you've slept, now your energy production starts and raises with the sun. Now it can come from certain different lights on your phones and stuff, but if you haven't had a good night's sleep and you haven't prioritized it, you are less resilient to stress the next day. And you probably know this listening to this. When you're stressed the next day, you had a shit night's sleep, you get cravings a little bit more, you're a bit more snappy, maybe a bit more road rage, maybe you feel like you have an afternoon crash, whatever it may be.
Yeah. And I think like going back to that, it's like when you talk specifically about that, that type of stress and how it affects things, it's like, let's take nutrition, for example. It's like, whether it's sort of fat loss or muscle growth, that like there's going to be massive negatives because if we're trying to eat, right? So we're trying to absorb and assimilate nutrients. If we're stressed and we're not in a rest and digest state, then we obviously can't do that effectively.
Yep.
And one thing that I really want to sort of take home is smartphones. And it's like eating while, in front of the phone, in front of the TV, still doing work. And I'm guilty of it. We're all guilty of it.
Eating with YouTube.
That's
a thing.
Exactly. Whatever it is, though, like it is, and again, depending on what you're scrolling through as well, I find general social media has just become such a toxic place that keeps like smacking you with, little stressful responses. And it's the reason why I've deleted my Instagram, like deactivated that recently, kept my work one, obviously, because I'm just spending too much time on there. And I think it's just putting everyone in that frame of mind where you're always heightened. You're always like just that little bit stressed. And it just becomes harder and harder as you spend more time on your smartphone to actually get to a point where you feel like, oh, I'm actually rested and relaxed and I can fully, get into that parasympathetic state.
Yeah.
And of course, like sauna, very good one as well, to get into that parasympathetic
Flex.
state. Yeah, Big Flex got the sauna in the $2,000 sauna in the garage.
What's the discount code?
Yeah. What's the discount? That's a good question. I think it's
Nuke?
AFN. I think it's AFN 100. Yeah, for Nook saunas.
Nuke saunas,
AFN 100 or AFN 200 would be one of the others. So you can get 100 or $200 off if you want, guys. But yeah, I find, for example, me like reading, doing that, and just keeping the phone off, and then just getting out in nature, like walking on the beach, getting out to the Dandenongs or wherever, and just trying to
Talkie.
yeah, trying to be in nature. Like at the end of the day, really will make a massive difference to those sort of things. So that's something that I'm generally prioritizing at the moment, just because I'm going through more periods when growing the business of just like higher stress and being on all the time. So I need now more periods of knowing when I switch off, I need to completely switch off.
Yeah, 100%. And look, anyone's form of emotional regulation for switching off could be different, right? Like even sitting down with your partner watching a Netflix show and it's like, oh, the blue light might affect me before bed or whatever, but it's like, the emotional regulation you're going to get from just winding down and enjoying that episode of Stranger Things season 5 that's coming out. Like, yeah, it's going to make wonders. Like for me, like, I'll play my Switch for an hour or two. I'm single, I don't have a partner, so it's just like, that's my form of like, okay, I just need something to just shut my brain off for the day. Like I've had a very busy day. I've had a lot of shit going on, so it's just like, I just need to wind down. And for other people, it could be walking the dog, it could be anything, right? There's so many things. As long as it's a healthy mechanism, not an unhealthy coping mechanism, like you've gone for something like a substance like alcohol or anything like that.
Yeah, and I think it's, again, you're right. There is it's almost like a little trigger, and everyone needs one to, almost get themselves from, finishing work to then, before going to bed. There's an hour, a couple of hour period there where, everyone will do a different thing. Like you mentioned, it might be reaching for alcohol. It might be, playing the Switch. It might be walking the dog. And I think that habit there of whatever you can do is going to play a really massive part in, regulating stress overall, because you're going to be doing it just about every single day.
Huge.
Obviously on the weekends might be slightly different, but I think that is a real big take home point, is if you can get something that, obviously helps you, whether that be, like I said, some exercise, walking the dog, gaming, whatever, just something to know that helps regulate your stress, bring the heart rate back down. I think that's going to pay dividends, obviously, when you're looking to optimize your body composition as well. But I think going into that, in terms of like nutrients, like let's say for fat loss, for example, like we know that, obviously if we're stressed, like for example, like B vitamins, antioxidant, all these things seem to, again, not be able to be absorbed. So what would you say are the key things that you see from people that like, especially when they're extremely stressed, that like, minerals and vitamins that just like, they just don't have in their blood work or just aren't absorbed very well.
I actually find it's their eating habits of like they're so rushed when they eat. And you don't realize that breaking down our food starts from up here. We chew it, and that actually starts the signal from stomach acid production, saliva glands, all that stuff. And some people are just like, I'm so stressed, I've only got 5 minutes, whatever. And they just eat something, or they eat something while they're driving, or just whatever it may be. They never actually sit down and just enjoy their food. So in terms of like a nutrient uptake, that's one there. Stress does have a direct impact on, we talked about the parasympathetic state, rest and digest. It's called rest and digest for a reason, because stomach acid production, when you've got cortisol going crazy, your body's not worried about stomach acid production and acidity and breaking down food. It's thinking, okay, this guy needs energy, pump the blood faster, like he needs to be going.
And I think it's like, you're going to deplete, like, for example, like, we all know we all probably consume too much sodium, but like potassium, magnesium, massive in terms of that. When it's heightened stress, we're going to lower those, B vitamins, iron, there's all these, different things that are really essential to, just general energy function and production. And that's going to obviously then branch out into specific mechanisms of, fat loss with mitochondria. Can we get the fat into the cell and actually get it out of the cell? And there's a lot of this stuff where, yes, of course, we know calories in, calories out, but we know it goes much beyond that now with, with micronutrition, with these things, and you've got to work these things together whilst managing stress. So I think back to training is a really good example. If you've got someone who goes, I'm going to go all in, right? And they go do like 75 hard or something, let's say, for example. So they're training twice a day. And look, granted, the training stress is probably too much, but at the same time, then they're probably eating quality food. They're not eating any junk. They're having enough water. They're sleeping, etc. Right?
Yeah,
so
two workouts a day.
Yeah, it probably balances out for
eating enough calories to recover from that.
Exactly, it balances out for a period of time, right? And you find people stick to it for a few weeks, but then again, that sort of same thing happens where
it's not sustainable.
they're too stressed, and then it's just like that twice a training a day just absolutely cooks them, and their body's lacking nutrients, etc. And they just go, down the toilet, unfortunately, because of the extreme training load that they're generally putting themselves under. So I think when you have people training 5-6 days a week, again, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, but volume has to be done the right way if you're going to do that. And again, if you're training twice a day or you're like an athlete or something, again, there's just a massive, I guess, focus on having to have the right nutrients, having to be fueled properly, doing all those right things, because again, if not, it might not happen next month, might not be the month after, but you're just slowly digging this hole, and it's only going to get deeper and deeper, and then it's going to take you longer to actually get out, until you finally burn out.
People don't realize athletes are some of the laziest people out there, because it is a full-time job to be resting and recovering around training. If you look at like an MMA fighter, the rounds they go through and everything, they talk about they put like 6 hours of recovery in. After that, they need to have their nap. They need to have their nutrition. They need to do their sauna or their ice bath. They need to see their deep tissue massage therapist, like all these different things, right? And it's like, because you're under so much stress from one thing, 9-to-5 job's not going to help with the recovery aspect, especially if you've trained for 3 hours in the morning, balls to the wall, and then you're also eating a lower amount of calories, and also you got a shit night's sleep from the night before. It's a whole accumulation that just does not work, unfortunately. Yeah.
I think it was funny you mentioned that with, you can imagine that placebo effect again. It's like when you go into like the sauna or hot and cold therapy or like, going out in nature or whatever, it's like, yes, there are these things where you'll look at it from, scientific point of view and you'll be like, oh, that's not as effective or this and that. For someone, it could be so super effective to switch them off. And for someone, they could be like, oh, I'm annoyed out on this hike, like I don't want to be out here, right? So it's important that everyone is going to be different, and you've got to find what helps to, what hobbies or whatever you want to do that actually helps to switch you off and put you into that parasympathetic nervous system, as often as you can. But then, of course, training-wise, we don't want to be parasympathetic when we train. So it's the reason people take coffees and pre-workouts and things. It's like you want to be, amped up before you train ideally, because then you get the most out of, motor unit recruitment and obviously pushing in and grinding those reps, like I said, with the right training intensity, but of course still need to be managing training volume at the end of the day.
It's interesting that you mentioned about the science and stuff, because like let's say the science shows that if you have a hot shower before bed, it just relaxes you and calms you down and whatever. if I have a shower right before bed, I'm wide awake. Like the second I have water just going all over me, I'm wide awake. Like, and it will take me ages to calm down from that. Whereas some people say like grounding, when there's so much science out there and PubMed research and everything about just reducing inflammation in the body from grounding and being connected to the Earth's magnetism core just with your bare feet. Some people could walk on grass and be like, this is a load of shit. I stood on a bindi.
Yeah.
Fuck this. You know, it doesn't do anything. And then there's some people that go, you know what? All the earth magnetism, the magnesium in the ocean, all that stuff, the sand. I love just going to the beach because it grounds me and it just brings me back. Like, it's different for everyone.
Yeah, definitely. I think the last thing I want to cover is just like potentially some quick supplementation in terms of managing stress.
Yep.
So one I really like is L-theanine. I find that's quite good in terms of, just like a calming agent. And of course you can combine that with caffeine, especially if you get like quite jittery. That can help with that, sort of focus without being, again, that caffeine jitter. Was it magnesium glycinate?
Yep.
Really good. Ideally with magnesium, I think I read something like a couple of weeks ago, and it's like that nearly 100% of the population now are deficient in it in some way, shape, or form.
It wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah.
I saw these statistics of like just having like 500 milligrams of magnesium, or maybe it was even less, but it like had some massive decrease of pancreatic cancer in people and colon cancer. And I was just like, holy shit, like just take magnesium.
Yeah. I think, again, we go back to stress, it's going to deplete that. So it's one of those things where, magnesium as well, when you take it, ideally, like, people say at night, and it's like dependent on how much you're taking, because of course it can, if you have too much, it can probably upset your gut a bit, but, glycinate, especially at night, would be probably good. But again, you can probably take it morning and night, sort of half the dose on both or whatever it is, and that'll probably help too. The one I want to not warn people about, but just be a bit cautious is ashwagandha, because there's a lot of research now coming out to the point of people are feeling like they're very numb, like getting very emotionless. And this is from prolonged periods of use over months and months, right? So, you have ashwagandha twice a week, you're probably going to be fine. But it's just something that a lot of people are almost getting addicted to, that sort of feeling of like feeling nothing, which is great at the start. And then they realize they're not happy, they don't get any pleasure, they don't get any sad, they're just like monotone the whole time.
No joy in
they
life.
feel no nothing, they just don't feel anything. So that is something that, again, can use, of course, but just be a little bit concerned about using it frequently for too long. And the Dream supplement that I take from Axe Labs, I find that's still the best sleep supplement on the market in terms of helping you get into that sympathetic state ASAP, and then keeping you asleep in terms of that REM and deep sleep as well. What about yourself?
I find glycine for me is by far the best. I've been taking 3 grams of glycine about 45 minutes before bed. And I was someone that, like, body temperature wise, I always run a little bit hot. I don't know if it's because I'm very metabolically active or anything like that. It could be the thermogenic effect of food, whatever. But, sometimes even in winter, I'd want to sleep with the fan on just because my body would just get so hot under the covers and everything like that. And I found with glycine, there's so much research of how it drops your body's core temperature before you sleep. And just meant the amino acid that is glycine for REM sleep is ridiculous. Like the dreams that I'm having, the deep sleep I'm getting, glycine, I can't fault it. Like in terms of like, you're pretty much stressed to the max and you need to just get, even if you need a short sleep, and you only have 5 hours, 6 hours to sleep, but you want a quality sleep, 3 grams of glycine about 45 minutes before bed, I find does wonders. Yeah, I take everything else. I take, the magnesium glycinate, cod liver oil, curcumin, all that stuff. But the main one just around purely sleep and the nervous system would be glycine.
Yeah, I have to give it a crack.
It's cheap. Now Foods, tablet form, don't need to get in powder. Yeah.
Sweet. Last one I want to mention is... Actually, it's not really a supplement, but it's nasal breathing. So again, if we can breathe through our nose instead of our mouth, especially when we're sleeping, again, parasympathetic nervous system, nose strips, really good for that. We both use them now.
Oh, yeah.
Who do I use? Breathe Ease. Yeah, Breathe Ease.
I'm a late adopter, but I swear by them.
Yeah, they're very good. So I find that definitely helps as well. Haven't gone to the mouth tape yet. Feel that's a bit too mummy for me, but yeah, just the nose strip I find has definitely improved My sleep, I'm pretty sure AFN 15 is the code from memory.
It worked for me last week.
AFN
I
15.
used it.
There you go. AFN 15 if you want some breathies. It ends up being like $1 a sleep. So sometimes much better than a sleep supplement. I'd always start with something more natural and then move to something like glycine. And then if you find these sort of things aren't working with glycine, magnesium, then I move to those sort of heavier duty sleep supplements that they sell, and then see if obviously there's any improvement as well. But of course, you can take all the subs in the world, you can do all that. But I think the first thing you need to learn is, again, how to calm down, how to regulate your stress, how to get into that parasympathetic nervous system, because if you can't do that, then you're just sort of band-aiding over everything else. So if there's one thing you want to take away from this, it's finding things you enjoy, finding things you switch off, trying to do them as often as you can, and trying to find that middle ground between obviously, training, nutrition, life, etc., and managing that stress effectively.
I know it's hard, guys, with the world we live in and just how busy life is, and you're trying to manage kids, relationships, making money, your health and fitness, getting enough sleep, everything. It can just be so much for people. Do what makes you happy and do what works for you. That's always my advice to people. Everyone has their own little ticks that makes them feel better or calmer or whatever. As long as it's not doing any harm or long-term harm, then I say go for it.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome, guys. That's this week's podcast. Again, if you guys enjoyed it, please give us a like, share, subscribe, YouTube, follow us on social media at Action Fitness Nutrition, or Liam at Coach Liam C. Murphy. And again, if you have any questions, shoot them through our inbox and we'll be able to cover them in a future episode for you. But until next time, guys, we'll see you in the next podcast.
See you guys.